All right, welcome back to the French Revolution. These are the good days. The king has come to Paris where the people are able to keep an eye on him, and they're writing a constitution. And then we'll be taking this to 1799, the first 10 years of the revolution. Let's pick up in 1791. Again, the king is in Paris. The National Assembly is working on a constitution, and they finally get it done. The spring of 1791, they announce that they've got the constitution ready. They're ready for the king to ratify this, and he will not. He'd been cooperating somewhat in 1790, but by 91 he decides he's not going to cooperate anymore, that the Constitution doesn't fit his needs. And people are a little upset about this. In fact, we know today, we have his correspondence, that he was actually hoping for a disaster, that this whole revolution would come crashing down and restore him to power. And then on Easter of 1791, he announced that he'd be going to church outside of the palace, and he would be attending a church with a priest who was not going along with the revolution. We call these non-juring priests, a priest who is against the ideas of the French Revolution that they've come up with. And so this becomes public knowledge, and mobs on the morning of Easter, as the king is trying to go out, leave the palace, mobs attack his carriage, they attack the palace gates. It's pretty clear he is a prisoner, and it's pretty clear to the people that he is not going to go along with the revolution. He now begins plotting his escape. Actually, he doesn't plot the escape. The escape from the Tuileries will be planned by the Swedish ambassador, a man named Axel Fearson. And Axel Fearson's kind of famous later in history because we believe he was having an affair with Marie Antoinette. This came to light later. I mean, there are rumors about it, but later on we figured out that maybe they were having an affair. There's no concrete evidence, but there's definitely some romance going on, maybe in a chivalric way, maybe sexually, we're not sure. But it's he who begins to plan this. And his plan is to get a carriage to the Tuileries, load the royal family in, and then get them quickly to the Belgian border. Well, Belgium back then wasn't really Belgium. It was a territory of the Holy Roman Empire. It was called the Austrian Netherlands. And again, this is her family holding. She comes from the Austrians, and this is an Austrian territory, at least safety for her. And so it's actually carried out. They get the king false passports. One night, they load the whole family into a carriage. They are able to escape the guards at the Tuileries. They're able to get through the Paris gates. And they're off into the countryside heading for the Belgian border. It's not that far. They make it as far as the town of Varennes. Varennes near the Belgian border, near the Austrian-Netherlands border. And it's at the town of Varennes they get stopped. What had happened was the king had sort of been taking his time. Once he was out of Paris, he felt he's in freedom there. The people of France surely love him. And so he took his time, and he was noticed at one of the stops. You know, they had to stop occasionally and change horses. And at one of the stops, a person recognized him. The person had worked at Versailles and recognized the king and sent a rider ahead to stop him, to alert the National Guard to stop him in the next town. And he has stopped at the town of Varennes, stopped just at this bridge. If he just gotten across the bridge, he might have made it to Belgium. And he stopped at the bridge. The National Guard comes out and demands that he come out of the carriage and don't recognize his credentials. And he admits it. He finally admits it. I'm the king. This is my family. We're taking a vacation over to Belgium. And the National Guard holds them. Word is sent back to Paris, and guards are sent to retrieve them back to Paris. Here they are in the carriage heading back into Paris. As they come into Paris, mobs along the street in silence, dead silence, that their king has betrayed them. They thought he was betraying them, and now it's pretty clear he is definitely against the revolution. He's trying to escape the country. Well, now we need to start talking about this constitution. They've been working on a constitution. He refused to sign it. Now they kind of know why. Well, if you've been working on this constitution, maybe you need to defend it. A constitutional monarchy. We need this king to cooperate. It's going to be possibly a lost cause because a lot of the radicals on the left are starting to use the word republic. We need to get rid of this guy, this clown king. Here's a cartoon making fun of Marie Antoinette as a pig. Get rid of this family. So what about that Constitution of 1791? Well, the right will say that the king's just been kidnapped. We need to keep the Constitution. The left is turning more radical. You're going to see the rise of a party, a left-wing party called the Jacobins. They're not the farthest left, but they're a pretty powerful left-wing party, the Jacobin Party, and they're calling this Constitution is null and void. We need a republic now. No more dealing with Louis XVI. Eventually, he did ratify the Constitution, and we need new elections now. The Constitution calls for elections. The National Assembly will disband itself and call for new elections. Well, as we go into 1792 now, we have a constitutional monarchy, apparently, with a king who has put his name on the document. He agrees now that he's going to go along with it. Well, one of the things that they turn to is war. This will unite everyone together. The war fever they're talking about is against the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire has been moving armies next to the French border. They've been helping the emigres. And so France turns to a war fever. National pride has been damaged. The Germans have armies on the border. And this will be throughout this new assembly, this legislative assembly. This unites them. And how could you say no? So it unites the legislative assembly. There is one voice that does say no, the voice of Robespierre. Makes himself known. He is against this war. He recognizes that danger is coming. And the Jacobins begin to follow him. The Jacobin Club will make him their leader, and the Jacobins will turn against this war. Even the king supports the war. Now, we know later on why he's doing this. He knows that the French army is in terrible condition. He knows that they're going to lose this war, and that will restore him to power. So he is going to be for the war, which inspires a lot of Frenchmen. Hey, the king is for it. Except Robespierre and the Jacobins are against it. On April 20th, enough members finally declare war, and they declare war on the King of Hungary and Bohemia. They don't want to offend the Germans, but really we're talking about the Holy Roman Emperor here, and his name is Francis II. He is of Marie Antoinette's family, so this is a war against the hated Austrians. So 1792, the war goes badly, as the king had predicted. 1792, disaster all along the Rhine River as German armies, Prussian armies come flooding into France. On June 20th, a mob in Paris attacks the Tuileries, just come charging in there that they've heard news of the disasters, and they confront the king. They make it in there and actually confront the king. He shows a bit of a spine here. Occasionally he can show some courage. And they back off. They were thinking about killing him, but then they back away, and they demand that he drink a toast. They bring a glass of wine out and say, here, we'll drink a toast to the Constitution. Show us that you actually are going to defend France. And he does drink the toast, although we know that he's not planning on defending France. He does drink the toast here in front of this mob. But it's a very embarrassing moment. The common man, as you see, the common man is laying hands upon the king. Well, going back to our war effort, there's an allied army of Germans invading France, and when they hear that the King of France has been touched by the common man, the leader of the German armies, a guy named Brunswick, will issue a manifesto, and his threat is that he will level Paris. If the people touch Louis XVI or the royal family in any way, he will come in and he will level Paris. Well, you can kind of understand what the reaction in Paris is. The reaction in Paris is going to be to attack again. On August 10th, when they find out about the Brunswick Manifesto, mobs attack the Tuileries again. This is the second attack on the Tuileries. This is August 10th, and this time there will be blood. They come bearing arms, and this time they will kill the king if they get their hands on him. Well, the king has some bodyguards this time, and his Swiss bodyguards come out to meet the mob, and there's bloodshed in the courtyard here, and Louis loses his nerve. When he finds that his Swiss guards are shooting civilians, he sends an order for them to cease fire, and they cease fire. It's unbelievable. They stop shooting into the mob, and the mob attacks them with knives and massacres them. The massacre of the Swiss guards in the courtyard of the Tuileries there. The mob now goes into the Tuileries. The king is on the run. He will run over to the Legislative Assembly, which is right next door, and they vote quickly that they're done with him, that he cannot control France, and they will vote in a new government. The first French Republic dates from August 10th, 1792, when there is no more king or queen. They take a vote. This will be year one of their new government, the new republic. Well, when you have a new government, that means the old government's got to go, and they call for new elections. They disband themselves and call for new elections in the middle of a war. It's unbelievable. It's inconceivable that they need a constituent assembly now to write a new constitution. Unbelievable. As Allied armies are approaching Paris, there is no government to speak of in France, except in Paris. Paris actually has a government. They have a commune government with the power of the sans-culottes. And it will be this government that basically takes over France for a while here, because they're the only government in existence, and they will organize a terrible event, the September massacres. As Allied armies are approaching Paris, the Paris Commune orders that the prisoners inside of Paris be massacred. In Paris, the imprisoned people will be taken out and killed. They are priests. They've been rounding up priests who have been going against the revolution. They've been rounding up any nobles they can get their hands on. And the way they do it is quite sickening. They will bring each person out individually, give them some kind of a mock trial. How do you plead? And the person will plead not guilty, and they will say, you've been judged guilty, and they will be mutilated and murdered with blunt instruments, knives, and hammers. And just one by one, the number's in the hundreds as these people are taken out and murdered. And it will spread to other cities. Other cities have been rounding up priests and nobles, and they'll do this likewise. All over France, people pulling people out of jail and murdering them. We have some drawings here of just the massacres of people massacred, sometimes individually, sometimes in groups. Quite sickening, the September massacres. In the middle of elections, France is holding elections at this point. I think you can understand how this could affect the elections. I think you might want to be voting with the left here. You start voting with the right, and you might be knifed. And so the left will start to take power in France. September 20th, there's good news. France actually won a victory. The Battle of Valmy, just outside of Paris, with the German armies approaching Paris. There actually is a victory to report. The French army has stood and fought. Not too many casualties. We call it the cannonade at Valmy. Both armies lined up, shot shots at each other, and the German army decided, well, you know, it's getting a little chilly here. We're getting toward fall, and decides to retreat back to the Rhine River to try again in the spring. So France is saved. This is considered one of the great victories in world history. It's not much of a battle, but it's really important because it saves the French Revolution. Had the German army continued on, they might have entered Paris. They might have leveled Paris. As it is, they go back to the Rhine River to wait for spring of 1793. Some other news to report. France has a new song. All the soldiers are singing this song, and it spreads like wildfire all over France. They have a new song written by a soldier from Marseilles. All the cities are sending their soldiers up to join the war effort, and his name is Rouget de Lille, and he will write the national anthem. It's called La Marseillaise, the national anthem. It's quite violent. Our national anthem, written in the War of 1812, talks about rockets and bombs bursting in air. It's written about a war. Well, theirs calls for killing the enemy and watering the fields with their impure blood. Again, this is a very violent time, violence that Americans can't even conceive of.